I'm back. Long time no see, y'all. But life happens. But today, we'll talk about a novela where three hot brothers come to the hacienda to get revenge for their dead sister and then eventually fall in love with the daughters of said family. Sounds familiar to you? Then congratulations, you probably watched Pasión de Gavilanes. But apparently Telemundo saw that and they were like, okay, let's do that, but again. And that's basically how we got Tierra de Reyes. So Tierra de Reyes is a remake of Pasión de Gavilanes. And going to this novela, I was very curious, was because Pasión de Gavilanes is already pretty good. People were commenting saying that Tierra de Reyes was actually a lot better than the original. So I watched it to see if that was true. And okay, Loki, y'all were right, okay? So in this novela, I will be talking about, the characters and the changes that they made to them, and what I liked about Tierra de Reyes, and what I liked about Pasión de Gavilanes as well. So I'll be comparing the two novelas, so without further ado, let's get into it. So both novelas begin with basically the same emotional motivation. Three brothers lose their younger sister, and that tragedy becomes part of what drives the revenge plot. So in Pasión de Gavilanes, we actually spend a lot more time with Livia before she dies, and this is what I liked about Pasión de Gavilanes better, is that we see her connection with the brothers, and we see how her brothers are protective of her, how much they care for her, and, their relationship dynamic. But in this remake, we only see Alma, which is the name of the new name, right? So basically, we only see her in 2 episodes, and we don't really see that strength of a relationship in this remake, if that makes sense. Obviously we see her interact with her brothers, but the fact that we only see her for 3 episodes before she dies, I just felt the emotional impact of her death wasn't as impactful as in Pasión de Gavilanes. Again, I just would have loved more sibling scenes before everything happened. Show me how she acts differently with Arturo than with Flavio. Show me Samuel being protective of her, and we didn't really get much of that. So where Tierra de Reyes wins for me though is the mystery surrounding Alma's death. So with Livia, we basically know what happened, right? We see her cutting it short, basically. But with Alma, we don't actually see what happened. We actually see her interacting with this character, Leonardo, which I will get into later. We see her interacting with him. You basically don't know what happened for sure until it is revealed. So that's what I do like about it. I just like mystery aspects more than just kind of showing us what happened. So I do like that Tierra de Reyes did that. Okay, so now moving on to the brothers themselves. So we're going to talk about Arturo, Flavio, and Samuel. So Arturo is obviously the Juan equivalent. He's the oldest brother, he's protective, he's responsible, and you can tell he feels like he's supposed to carry the weight of the family. But I don't think Arturo and Juan have exactly the same personality. Juan is much more intense, and he has this very commanding presence where even when he's not saying much, you can tell what he's thinking by his facial expressions. He's also extremely stubborn, and not that Arturo isn't, but he's much more so than he is. And Arturo has some of those qualities, but I think he's just more softer and he's more empathetic. He still has that strong eldest brother mentality, but there's a vulnerability to him that separates him from Juan. And I really like that direction they took with Arturo, because it shows that, men can have emotions too, which I appreciate. Because they didn't do that with Juan, and I guess that toxic masculinity is still very much present, and evidently so, back in the 90s, I guess, when the Pasión de Gavilanes was made. Actually, I don't even know. I don't know, early 2000s, late 90s, I don't know. But the fact that they show Arturo being more vulnerable, and I will say there is this major flaw that Arturo has, and it's that stupid hat. Please take it off. That's all.
That's all.
Flavio and Oscar are actually 2 characters that I think are very similar personality-wise. They're both mischievous, they're both flirtatious, they're both impulsive, charming, and they both love having fun. They both have that lighter energy next to their more serious brothers. But underneath all of that, they're still fiercely loyal. And the second something happens to the family, they're there. And honestly, I'm completely fine with Flavio being similar to Oscar because, this kind of personality works. And I will say, Flavio is more loyal than Oscar was in Pasión de Gavilanes. We see Oscar being more flirtatious with other women, while Flavio was only being flirtatious to make Irina jealous. Not that that makes it any better, but at least he wasn't like eyeing other women, if you know what I mean. Samuel and Franco are both like the calmer brothers, and although Samuel feels a little more serious and direct, Franco has this sensitivity and gentleness that balances Juan and Oscar really well. And while Samuel plays a similar role between Arturo and Flavio, I think what Samuel really benefits from is like his romance with Andrea. I liked his character better more in Tierra de Reyes because Franco, he was more of a doormat. And not saying that's a bad thing, but it was just kind of frustrating to see people walk all over him and him being more gullible about stuff. But he actually has more not intense, but he's more confident in himself, which I like. So I do like the changes that they made with Samuel. So now moving on to the sisters. So we're gonna talk about Sofia, Andrea, and Irina. So this is where I think Tierra de Reyes makes some of its most interesting changes, because while the brothers retain a lot of the personalities from their Pasión de Gavilanes counterparts, the Del Junco sisters feel much more distinct from the Elizondo sisters. So we're starting off with Sofia. So Sofia is obviously the Norma equivalent, but personality-wise, I think they're pretty different. I mean, obviously they're both the eldest sisters, they're both compassionate, they're both protective, and they're very connected to the families. But Norma feels much more emotionally driven to me, while Sofia feels more practical and independent. And one thing I really liked about Sofia is that she's a veterinarian, and because her profession actually fits her personality. She's caring, she's capable, and connected to the ranch and the animals. But she also has something that belongs entirely to her, and she has responsibilities outside of being Cayetana's daughter or Arturo's love interest. And I'm not saying that Norma wasn't all those things and she didn't have a life of herself, but we only see her being a dental assistant for 3 episodes, and then they completely get rid of that. I don't know, it just feels like Sofia's profession makes a lot more sense for her character, and I also think that also helps her relationship with Arturo a lot more in this novela, because Arturo is also very knowledgeable about animals and he loves animals. So basically, when Sofia wants to cure an animal, he kind of suggests, what if you do this? They kind of work together to help the animals that they love. So I really like that change. And we also stopped seeing Sofia being a vet later in the novela, but at least they leaned into it more than what they did with Norma. Now moving on to Andrea. So Andrea is probably my favorite reinterpretation of one of the sisters, because you can clearly see that she's supposed to parallel Sara without her feeling like a copy. And honestly, Andrea pisses me off way less. Sara is extremely strong-willed, and she's outspoken, stubborn, and independent, and she knows exactly what she thinks. And that's part of what makes Sara entertaining, but it's also part of what can make her incredibly frustrating. Andrea is stubborn too, don't get me wrong, but I think her stubbornness comes from a different place. Andrea feels much more controlled, and she feels like the one who has internalized Cayetana's expectations the most. And I'm not saying that Sara didn't have that pressure, because Gabriela, also the mom, did also put that pressure on Sara, because she was kind of her most similar personality-wise to her. But even Cayetana was saying to Andrea, you are the most like me. And so basically she has other expectations for her. And that's why she was so disappointed when she was caught with Samuel, was because she failed her mom in another way that the other sisters didn't. So Andrea has this great pressure to make her mom proud. Again, not that Sara didn't, but with Andrea, it just feels like there's more at stake for her. And one of my favorite changes that they made with this character is that we see Andrea pining over Samuel. With Sara, like I mentioned before in my previous video, her relationship with Franco did not convince me at all, just because we never saw her being attracted to Franco, being pining over him, crying over him at all, until she just suddenly got with him. in my opinion. But in this novela, we actually see her being interested in Samuel from the very beginning, and we see her being jealous when he interacts with other women. Like, she cries over him. We just see that attraction way before. And just, it made the relationship between her and Samuel a lot more believable, in my opinion, as well. So, and then we have the youngest sisters. Irina and Jimena are both fun, impulsive, flirtatious, rebellious, and much less interested in behaving properly than their older sisters. But somehow, Jimena annoyed me significantly less. Irina has very strong youngest child energy, if y'all get what I mean. And I can say that because I'm the middle child. So Jimena has a lot of those same impulsive qualities. Like, she's flirtatious, rebellious, she's fun-loving, and absolutely capable of making questionable decisions. But Jimena's chaos feels a lot more charming to me for some reason. Okay, look. Jimena has this natural playfulness that makes her chemistry with Oscar feel effortless, and maybe this is like more of an actress issue thing, because with Irina's character, she was stubborn like Jimena, and she was like, kind of spoiled like Jimena, but the fact that Irina's stubbornness, like, I don't know why, just annoyed me a lot more than it should have, I guess. The thing that they dragged a lot, though, is that her anger with Flavio when she found out his identity, like, she was mad at him for like seemed like a fucking decade. Like, girl, like they did not really get together for a while. Okay, I'm gonna talk about Cayetana. So neither of these women are winning the Mother of the Year award. Like, let's be real. They're both controlling, class-conscious women who believe they know what's best for their daughters. But honestly, like, between the two, I do prefer Cayetana. And the biggest reason is that I genuinely believe Cayetana loves her daughters. She makes terrible decisions for her daughters, and she's manipulative and she cares way too much about status, but underneath all of that, I still see some actual, like, maternal concern. And with Gabriela, there were moments where I genuinely wonder, like, do you even like your daughters? Cayetana frustrates me, but I understand her more. And, during the novela, like, I guess you can say she was mostly looking out for her daughters. And don't get me wrong, like, Cayetana was wrong about putting a man over her own daughters, and hers not believing that her daughters when they said that Leonardo was trying to abuse them and trying to take advantage of them, and her kind of basically like kicking them out. But at least, like, with Cayetana, when when Sofia was getting married, she wanted to be there for her daughter, and she went just to see her, while Gabriela, in the meantime, like, did not want to go at all because, like, her pride was too fucking much, I guess. Again, not that Cayetana was wrong, because in many ways she was still wrong about her views and her actions, but at least I can understand her a bit more. And, I can usually see that in her own incredibly, and I mean incredibly, misguided way. She thinks she's protecting her daughters, which even Arturo admitted it in the end. And, oh, that's another thing I liked about this novella, is that in the end, when she was kidnapped with Arturo, she was like, I didn't want to see this before, but, like, you and your brothers are great people, and, like, I shouldn't have acted the way I did. And Arturo was like, well, you were just trying to protect your daughters, like, which I understand. But, and in Pasión de Gavilanes, we didn't see that at all with Gabriela. Like, she was still throwing insults at him until the very fucking end.
Bruh.
Like, girl. Child, anyways. But I think her relationship with Don Felipe also helps a lot. Her father, by the way. And I love Don Martin, but Don Felipe was a lot more entertaining to watch. Like, I love his insults, like, pelele patán patético. And it's like, I don't know, he was just, and he also didn't take advantage of, well, not advantage, but, like, he wasn't, like, slapping women's asses, so I appreciate that. So now moving on to Soledad. So one difference I found really interesting is how Soledad fits into the Del Junco household compared with Eva. So Eva feels genuinely embedded in the Elizondo family, so obviously she works for them, but there's history and emotional attachment there. When Eva wants to leave, Gabriela doesn't want her to go. But Soledad and Cayetana's relationship feels a lot more distant. So when Soledad wants to leave, Cayetana almost doesn't think twice and was like, I'm okay, girl. Because even when she found out that Soledad was helping the brothers and, she was kicked out. But I actually, now that I think about it, I don't think they ever really made up with each other. The last thing we saw them interacting was like when Soledad was trying to convince Cayetana like not to marry Leonardo. And she was basically like, girl, fuck off. And I guess I get it, but it's like, girl. Like she practically raised her daughters and you see the relationship she has with your daughters too. It's like, can't you at least like give her a chance again? Like, I don't know. It immediately makes Soledad feel more like an employee than part of the family, which is very different from Eva's role. And I actually don't know if Eva ever really made up with Gabriela either. The relationship with the mom just felt different. So I'm going to get into like part of the storyline where I think Tierra de Reyes did a lot better. I really like that they made Miranda younger. So Miranda is the adoptive mother of Veronica, and it just made Veronica being her daughter a lot more believable than Ruth's mom, I guess. I also prefer Veronica being directly connected to the Gallardos as their half-sister, as opposed to Ruth being like their distant cousin or something. It just made a lot more sense to the plot. Here's the thing though. Okay, I'm gonna talk about Veronica for a little bit because Veronica, I have very mixed feelings about her. In comparison to Ruth in Pasión de Gavilanes, I liked Ruth a lot better than Veronica. Veronica was raised by Miranda, right? And Miranda raised her to be this like spoiled girl and very class status aware, very superiority complex feelings going on there. So she was very unlikable at first, but when she falls in love with a humble employee is where she starts to get better, but I digress. But anyways, here's the thing I didn't like about her is that when Veronica finds out that Soledad is her biological mother, and listen, I understand why she's initially upset. Like, her entire understanding of her family just changed. Her whole life has been a lie, basically, and like, girl, I understand, like, be angry, like, ask questions, but my problem is what happens after Miranda basically confirms that Soledad was forced to give Veronica up. So Soledad was forced to give up Veronica when she was an infant by Miranda, and even Cayetana was forcing her to because she was basically like, girl, like, you can't work here while you're pregnant. I mean, I guess I get it, but it's also like, it's either being pregnant and have no job or give up your daughter and have financial stability. Like, girl, what would you choose? Like, again, like, Miranda confirms that Soledad was forced to give her up by Miranda herself. And Veronica was still like being rude to Soledad and not wanting to understand where she was coming from, and avoiding her and trying to like blame her too. And it's like, girl, like, get that you were upset that she was your mom this whole time, and girl, like, what did you want her to do? Like, you wanted her to have no money, and those are just very hard options for a woman. And like, the fact that she just pushed her away after she found that out, like, I don't know, just kind of gives me the ick, not gonna lie. Veronica again was basically really rude to Soledad. Well, this poor girl like was just trying to get closer to her, as she was never allowed to even see her for about a decade when Veronica came back from Europe, and she's still directing all that anger to her. And then Soledad basically has to almost die before Veronica finally softens toward her. That whole storyline made me feel so bad for Soledad. She already lost years with her daughter, and then when the truth finally comes out, she's still being punished for something that happened to her. Meanwhile, Miranda doesn't face nearly enough consequences. And that's like my biggest problem with the storyline, is that Miranda can genuinely love Veronica and still have done something horrible to Soledad. And both things can be true. I did like that Miranda and Soledad eventually made peace. However, I still believe that Miranda didn't get enough punishment for forcing Soledad to give up Veronica and for lying to Veronica this entire time, but I digress. And here's another thing that I really like about Veronica while still talking about her, is that there was this scene where Cayetana fainted upon seeing Veronica because obviously she's a copy and paste of Alma, and her literal response was, I'm just used to like being the center of attention. Like, girl, you ain't no Michael Jackson for people to be fainting at your presence like that. Like, girl. That said, I do like how Veronica falls in love with a humble employee in Tierra de Reyes. It makes her feel a lot more grounded and honestly a lot more humble as a character, which in turn obviously like makes her a lot more likable than she otherwise would have been. And for somebody who can be pretty frustrating in other parts of the story, I like seeing that she wasn't obsessed with status when it came to the person she loved. As for characters, obviously like I still prefer Ruth, But because Veronica tested my patience several times, especially with Pablo. And girl, here's the thing, like, Veronica left to Europe to marry a man to make her mom happy, right? And then for out of the blue, she decides to come back and not marry him. Girl, so she comes back out of the blue, barges into Pablo's room, and she sees that he's already moved on, because by this time it's been like several months, I think. And she gets pissed at him, and I'm like, girl, what did you expect? Like, you expected him to stay celibate this entire fucking time? Like, and when Pablo confronts her about it, I forgot the name in English, but como que le reclamó. She literally told him, like, I thought our love was supposed to be forever. Like, I thought you were only supposed to love me. Like, girl,
Bruh.
you left him to marry someone else, even though you knew it wasn't gonna make you happy, and you expect him to not move on from you at all. Like, for me, that's just very selfish of you. Okay, so you can do that to him, but he's expected not to do the same thing. Like, he's not expected to move on and find happiness somewhere else. Girl, you're too much for me. Like, I did not like that. Here's the thing, I didn't really care that much about Veronica and Pablo as a couple. Even with that emotional arc, like, it just didn't fully land for me at all. And it's like, I'm gonna be honest, I just skipped through them. Like, it didn't really change anything anyways. Okay, now moving on to the parallels of Patricia, Candela, and Ulises Matamoros, right? So Patricia is obviously the Rosario parallel. So both are glamorous singers whose worlds feel completely different from the main sisters. But honestly, like, Rosario felt more iconic to me. I noticed the biggest difference is with Patricia and Candela versus Rosario and Pepita. So I definitely prefer Rosario and Pepita's friendship because it just feels a lot more secure, and Pepita can support Rosario without the relationship constantly turning into a competition. And I'm not saying that Rosario wasn't competitive with the other singers, because she definitely was, especially with Pepita. But I really like her friendship with Panchita because there was just like never competition there, never jealousy. On the other hand, in this novela, we see Patricia being jealous of Candela, especially when... Okay, here's the thing. So, Ulises, who's like the Armando Navarro of this novela, right? Like, he finds out that Patricia went back with Samuel, and he was jealous of that, and so basically he like kicked her out of the bar, and now Candela was forced to be the new singer of the bar. And basically, he was either like, okay, so either you be a singer here or you're gonna be fired. And obviously, Candela, not wanting to lose her fucking job, she accepts it. And when Patricia finds out, she was so pissed at her, and she was like, how could you do this to me? You betrayed me. And even when Candela explains to her, like, girl, like, it was either that or I lose my fucking job. And she was like, bitch, I don't care. You're supposed to be my friend. I'm like, huh?
Bruh.
Girl, again, that entitlement I just hate. You know damn well that if that was you, you would do the same fucking thing. Like, you would get on that stage and become a singer because no one wants to lose their fucking job in this economy at two. While the relationship does get infinitely better later in the novela, I still prefer Rosario and Pepita's dynamic. Like, their friendship again just feels a lot more supportive and less threatened by one woman getting an opportunity. Then we have Ulises Matamoros. Hey, shout out to Matamoros, Tamaulipas. Thank you. From Tierra de Reyes. And Armando Navarro from Pasión de Gavilanes, right? So they both, like, again, kind of one of the villains in this novela, although Ulises has more of like power in this novela because he directly works with like the other villains in his girl. It's like all interconnected, but anyways, he has more power. I don't prefer one character over the other just because I never really cared about their character anyways. I never liked them, but girl, imagine being a normal employee there, like you're just trying to wipe down a table and suddenly like someone's threatening someone, like pulling out a gun or whatever, and you're just like, can I please finish my shift? Like, girl.
Can I get a waffle? Can I please get a waffle?
Here's one of the characters that I really like the improvement on. I'm gonna talk about Beatriz. So Beatriz actually has a personality. So she's a parallel of Edwina Trueba, and she just feels a lot more layered and like she actually has a life outside of whatever Samuel is doing, honestly. Here's the thing, like, Edwina's wealth comes from her husband's leaving money to her. And listen, nothing wrong with that, girl. Like, secure that bag, sis. But I really appreciate that Beatriz has her own business and that her wealth comes like from part of her own work. She is the CEO of a bank where she inherits that to Samuel, but we see her actually working, and we see her have a life outside of Samuel again. And what I really like about the change that they made with her is that we see her having a relationship with the Reyes brothers, like Gallardo, I guess. Like, we see her giving Arturo employment in her ranch, and we see her give Samuel employment, and we see her connect Flavio with one of the top spas in Houston, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's not just her helping out Samuel, it's her helping out the brothers as well. She was a very, very sweet woman too. Like, she's one of my favorite characters in the Telenovela. And, I was low-key, like, really sad when she passed away, because I was like, dang, like, y'all really let a good one die. Like, so I'm going to talk about Leonardo. So Leonardo's one of the main villains of this novela. And what I really like about what they did with this character is that he makes the villain a lot more interesting than Fernando. He feels a lot more calculating and ambitious. Fernando also just wanted to take over the ranch and the wealth and everything, but at least Leonardo was the main cause of the conflicts in the novela. Like, for example, he caused the death of Alma. He caused the death of the father of the Del Junco sisters. Like, he's the one that started basically the plot of the novela. And, like, he's actually a villain, and instead of just kind of just there, like how Fernando was. And honestly, he's a lot smarter in this novela too. And dare I say, Leonardo was a lot more entertaining in this novela too. Like, his insults were so funny.
¿Es que tengo los ojos achinados o qué? Hablo en mandarín. Fuera de mi propiedad, huele feos.
Si sigue viviendo en este rancho tarde o temprano, vas a ser mía. Amén.
Like, Cabeza de Broccoli, Sancho Panza, like, singing out his, like, threads. Like, he was so fucking funny. Okay, so kind of going into, like, the villains of the novela, I'm going to talk about Isadora. I also prefer what Tierra de Reyes does with Isadora compared with Dinora. So Dinora comes into Pasión de Gavilanes later, and primarily becomes a threat to Juan and Norma's relationship. And listen, a completely unhinged woman trying to destroy a relationship can be really entertaining, but eventually that storyline just gets so repetitive after some time. And I actually mentioned this before. There's this character that did the same thing in Lo que la vida me robó, and if you haven't seen my review on that, like, what are you doing? Go watch that right now. Or after this, like, whatever. But basically, Maria was his character who did the exact same thing. Like, her purpose was just to destroy Alejandro and Montserrat. Like, she had nothing else going for her. And that too is like, girl, like, do y'all not have anything else to do? Do y'all not have hobbies? Like,
Oh my god, bro.
like, what are you doing? Like, it gets so tiring after some time. But what I liked about this change that they made here is that we see her being introduced much earlier and already has things going on before her obsession with Arturo becomes central. So she's involved in criminal activity with her father. And low-key, like, her relationship with her father was a little bit weird. Like, I always thought they had this, like, secretary CEO kind of relationship with each other. And, that actually made sense because we later find out that she is not even his actual daughter anyways. So Isadora doesn't suddenly become morally questionable because she wants Arturo. We already know that she's been a villain. Like, we know what she's capable of because of the business that she's involved with her father. So I do like that change they made a lot in the novela. Another change I really liked is that Emilio Valverde actually plays a major role in the novela. So he isn't simply introduced as Isadora's evil father and then left standing around in the background. Emilio has his own criminal operation and his own motivations, and most importantly, his own history with the Gallardo family. And I think that's what makes him really interesting, because him being the central villain of the novela kind of connects everything together. Instead of the predecessor, Pasión de Gavilanes, Dinora's father was just kind of whatever, like, he literally didn't do anything. But at least in this novela, they made that connection. For example, Emilio Valverde was enemies with the Gallardo's dad. The Gallardo's dad was a cop, and he was about to destroy his organization and arrest Emilio. So when Emilio finds that out, he kidnaps the dad and he imprisons him for 10 years. So he wants revenge on the dad, and he also wants revenge on the sons too, because it's basically a revenge inside the revenge. And I think that history makes the current storyline feel much larger because Arturo, Flavio, and Samuel are essentially inheriting consequences from something that happened before they were even involved. And it also makes Isadora's personality make more sense because we see the environment where she comes from. And we also see that he puts her own mom in a mental hospital. Because, like, we find out that he was in love with her and she left him for another guy or whatever, and kidnaps Isadora and, like, raises her as her own. So that was kind of like his revenge on the mom too. It just makes everything so connected. And all of that criminal plotting leads perfectly into another thing that I think this novela does better. It's like the police are actually competent. I know the bar is on the floor, but I noticed, at least in this world, in this novela, they actually go with their leads. They actually investigate leads. They follow up. They investigate people. Like, they actually remember that, like, crimes are illegal. You know what I mean? They actually show up. And what I really liked about the police presence is one particular police officer, Capitan Fernandez, is that, like, his connection with the Gallardo brothers too. Capitan Fernandez was the best friend of the Gallardo's dad, and Capitan Fernandez as well, he was actually trying to stop Isadora, and not that the other police people weren't, but, like, at least in this novela, he's not afraid to go after them, if that makes sense, because the other novela, they were just like, oh yeah, like, Dinora escaped, but I mean, I don't know, I guess we'll capture her when she shows up, I guess. I like his eventual relationship with Cayetana because I think their personalities really work, and I liked how they gave him more of a storyline as well. They focus more on his background and his eventual, like, relationships with Cayetana and someone else, and again his relationship with the Gallardo brothers. I'm going to talk about what I liked better in Tierra de Reyes. The number one thing that I think they really improved on was the pacing. I mentioned this before in my previous video on Pasión de Gavilanes, but Pasión de Gavilanes, like, they stretched out the plot for so long, like, it wasn't even funny. Like, they, for example, like, the jungle situation, the kidnapping of Don Martin, the mental hospital, like, all of that happened in, like, 15 episodes, and at this point I'm like, girl, okay, let's get on with it. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I said that I felt really bored for some of it, because, like, it was the same thing every 5 episodes, and a lot of it was not concluded, and if it was, like, started up again. So, like, the pacing felt really, really slow. But at least in Tierra de Reyes, like, they improved that significantly. So, for example, like, the jungle thing where Arturo and Cayetana were kidnapped, they were in, like, that jungle shit or whatever, that lasted max 2 episodes. And the kidnapping of Don Felipe in the mental hospital also max 2 episodes. So I really liked that because they were moving things along and I wasn't bored. Okay, like, when is the next thing gonna happen? So at least it was like boom, 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 like, things were constantly going on, and I really liked that. And I also prefer the mystery surrounding Alma's death, and even though Livia's death is much more emotionally impactful, at least this novela gave me more questions to solve. I guess everyone basically knew that Leonardo did it, but at least it was like, could it have been him, or could it have been, like, this other person? You know what I mean? So at least there was this mystery, and maybe because I'm more of, like, I enjoy, like, mystery a lot more, and, like, a whodunit kind of show better. For me, it just works especially well because the police are actually present enough for the criminal storylines to feel like real investigations. And, romantically, I do prefer Arturo and Sofia's chemistry than Juan and Norma's. I love that we actually get to watch them live together and function as partners instead of only getting the forbidden romance stage. Like, I remember Norma and Juan, it took them, like, a year to, like, move in together and, like, start their lives together. But at least with Arturo and Sofia, they moved in before they got married. I think they didn't. I don't know. Like, I feel like there was a lot more chemistry with Arturo and Sofia. And like I mentioned before, I feel like their love for animals, Arturo knowing how to cure animals and Sofia being a vet, really helped the relationship flow and grow. I think that's the major reason why this relationship worked for me a lot better than Juan and Norma's. And again, Samuel and Andrea also get a much stronger romantic buildup because Andrea is visibly interested in him early on, and we see her, like, pining after him. So now I'm going to get into the things that I still think Pasión de Gavilanes did a little bit better. Livia's relationship with her brothers, I felt, was, like, a lot more shown throughout the novela, and her death had a lot more emotional weight to it because we actually spent enough time with them to understand the loss. While Tierra de Reyes gave me more suspense and mystery, Pasión de Gavilanes gave me more of a stronger grief, and also Jimena's a lot more entertaining than Irina. I like Irina, but Jimena's chaos is simply more charming, and obviously Ruth's character is miles better than Veronica, sorry not sorry. And again, I like that relationship Rosario had with Pepita, and I liked Rosario's character overall, and of course she has her flaws, but she was just like more entertaining to watch. Here's a major thing that Pasión de Gavilanes did a lot better than Tierra de Reyes. Girl, and that's the music. Y'all have nothing on Pasión de Gavilanes. Like, the intro song, could never skip it. Like, Okay, here's the thing. Like, I have finished watching that novela months ago, but I still remember how this theme song goes. Like, I still remember the songs from that novela. While in this one, like, I'm probably gonna forget about it in like a week or two. And just because I'm giving this remake a lot of credit does not mean I'm letting it get away with everything. First of all, Arturo's hat. Burn it. I don't know who greenlit that, but that thing pissed me off, and I know I'm giving it a lot of energy, but it really did distract me throughout the novela. Like, you're really giving him that stupid hat? Anyways. Okay, here's another thing. Second, whoever thought that god-awful pink lipstick was a good idea, I don't know how you got that job, I'm sorry. Like, it's just, like, it was so, again, one of the most distracting things in a novela, and I'm not kidding. Okay? I just can't, like, I couldn't get over it. Another thing that I think Pasión de Gavilanes did better was the whole Doña Hortensia situation. So, Doña Hortensia made more sense being in this mental hospital, and it was because she saw Ruth and she was wearing Livia's clothes, and she thought she saw Livia, like her ghost, right? And because of that, she went to the mental hospital. And again, I know that plotline dragged a little bit too much, but at least, like, it kind of made more sense. And the whole Don Martin thing, like, he was also there because Fernando made Gabriela do it. Again, lasted like 10 episodes, but at least it made more sense in this novela because in Tierra de Reyes, Doña Hortensia's parallel, I forgot her name, but basically the mom, he had a daughter who basically was killed in a fire. I know they didn't bring this up, but she was killed in a fire at the restaurant that they all had. And I think it was because Leonardo found out something. It was something, girl, I can't even remember, but it was something that Leonardo did. And after her daughter died, girl, I can't even remember, something else happened. And basically, like, she started saying, like, oh my gosh, like, my daughter and Alma are coming back. Oh, and then Arturo was tortured by Isadora, and that's when she started going, like, a little bit, like, mentally not there, and she was put into the mental hospital. But I don't think they handled it as good as Pasión de Gavilanes, just because I feel like it would have made more sense for her not be there in the first place, if you know what I mean. And honestly, like, I don't think there was ever like a good conclusion to that either at all, because in Pasión de Gavilanes we see her talk to Ruth and realize that, oh, she's not actually Livia. I guess it was a severe case of PTSD. I'm not sure how that works. Like, I don't know if you suddenly get a cure of that talking to... I don't know how that works, but basically at least we get a closure of that. But in Tierra de Reyes, we never saw any of that at all. Just saw her escape with Don Felipe, and that was it. Literally, the end of the novela was them showing everyone 3 years later. Everyone has kids, but I don't remember... Like, she was at the party, but I don't know if she ever got over that at all. As much as I really like the pacing difference in this novela, stuff like that didn't make sense. You know, at least in Pasión de Gavilanes, we saw like a conclusion and we saw it made more sense with her. But in this novela, I just feel like they could have gone a different direction with that character. Especially since her character was a lot better in this novela too. I preferred her over Doña Hortensia. I digress. It's not the biggest thing, but also like, could have done that better. Okay, so now here comes the $1 million question. Which novela is better? Did Tierra de Reyes make the story a lot better? And here's my answer. I do like Tierra de Reyes a lot more than Pasión de Gavilanes. And I'm not saying that I would never rewatch Pasión de Gavilanes, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't watch it. I'm just saying that Tierra de Reyes improved a lot of the things I was frustrated about, and the things that I complained about in my previous video about this novela like improved all of the things that, you know, I was not happy with. So I do think that Tierra de Reyes is a better remake, because Pasión de Gavilanes is apparently another remake of another one I don't know the name of, but point is, Pasión de Gavilanes is not original. And I did see a lot of my comments in my previous video mentioned that they really liked this novela better because of the plot doesn't drag and the characters are better, and you know, I really agree. And here's the thing, if you were to ask me which one should I watch over the other, I would say it really depends. So Pasión de Gavilanes is a good novela to just sit back and relax, and I'm not saying it won't frustrate you, because it really does, especially with Gabriela. But with Pasión de Gavilanes, there were a lot more silly moments, and there were a lot more moments where you could like laugh at and just kind of like be on your phone. It's more of a background noise novela, and I'm not saying it's not entertaining, but again, there's a lot of filler that you could go without. The pacing is a little bit horrendous. But with Tierra de Reyes, I couldn't be on my phone. Like, it was just a lot of things going on, and like you kind of have to watch it to like understand what's going on, and a lot of things happen in each episode. Is not just like one thing in each episode, it's like 500 things that happen in one episode, so it's like a lot more fast paced. So I really do enjoy that, and I'm not saying that Tierra de Reyes didn't have funny moments, because they definitely did, but it's a lot more like serious novela. Although I do like Pasión de Gavilanes, if I were to rewatch one of the novelas again, it would be Tierra de Reyes. But now I need to know what you guys think about this novela. Do you prefer one over the other? I know some of you guys do already, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't be afraid to tell me what novelas I should do next, because I do have like a growing list of telenovelas that y'all are recommending me. And I think my next video will be Amor Real, because that is the original, and I say that very lightly, version of Lo que la vida me robó. I know some people wanted me to keep making comparison videos of telenovelas, so since I already watched Lo que la vida me robó, it'll be a lot easier for me to watch Amor Real and compare the two. But again, don't be afraid to let me know what other ones I should watch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!